Morning, ladies and gents. Just going to do a quick intro to this one, just to highlight a couple of the conversational topics that were had. The first one, which is important because you may pick it up and you may not, from the conversation, was to do with the governing bodies of the sport, the political side of it. That was predominantly the NCA and the CRE. The NCA was a 32 county governing body, and that was semi-pro and amateur. If you were part of the NCA, there was no money to be made off of this. But if you were part of the CRE, which is a 26 county governing body, that was recognised internationally, and if you were part of the CRE, you were a pro. But later on came the NACA, which, as Paddy puts it, was began by members of the IRA, and that was very interesting how the NACA had a part to play in the governing of the sport in Ireland. And it was very bitter, a lot of hate between them, and he comes out with some really, really interesting stories there that you would think at the time cycling was still in its infancy, how can there be so much bitterness? But you might say, you know what, it's in its infancy, that's why there was so much bitterness and a lack of understanding. But we moved on there to drug use within the sport. The unfortunate injuries, really horrific injury that Paddy suffered very early on in what would have been a fantastic career and already was at that stage, and was ended. And then also there was me getting an education on what it is to be a team player. At certain points of the conversation, I literally just could not get my head around how losing or giving up your bike for the next guy could be for the betterment of the team. It took me a minute. I think normally in my day-to-day I could probably understand it, but I just could not, from my own point of view, picture getting off of my bike in a race and handing it to somebody else because they thought they could do better than I could. So Paddy had to educate me on that a little bit. But a really, really interesting conversation. The main thing I want to highlight though is the sound quality. I spent a lot of time editing the sound quality in this so that it is comfortable for you to listen to. And I hope I did the job. It's only at the very end, the last 5 minutes of the conversation, unbeknownst to myself and Paddy at the time, his microphone battery had died. So we were working off of my mic to be able to bring you the last 5 minutes. So it is of a lower level, a lot lower level than the rest of it, but hopefully I have brought up the levels enough that you can hear what he's saying. Here's part 2. Enjoy.
Coming up to the last, the 100-mile time trial was on again, and I had to defend it. I had won it before. And we went down to Monster Evan, and we started off. Now, when I was training, I had a 100-mile measured out on the road, and I was almost cycling around 4 hours, 10 minutes, 4 hours, 15 minutes, 4 hours, 2 minutes, around the 4 hour mark for the 100 miles. So the other thing about it was I was a solo man. I hate training with other people because they were always doing too much talking. And you can't concentrate if you're talking. And I wanted complete and total silence. Just think, concentrate on what you're doing. And anyway, when it came to that stage, I started off on the bridge in Kildare, and there was a good few. There were 50 cyclists because too many people don't take part in 100 miles. It's a long, tough race, and 4 or 5 hours. Some fellas don't finish maybe there for 6 hours. But anyway, we started off, and I was last man off because I was the champion, and I got the honour for starting last, which is a great advantage because you could take advantage. Now you knew what was in front of you, so I went after them anyway. And the first fella I caught, a fella called Concar, Kildare man. No, he was a good time trialer. He was very good actually, and I caught him anyway when I was cycling to a headwind, and it was tough. But I passed him by anyway, and if I was passing by, he said, for F's sake, wait, will you slow down, give me a chance, So I ignored him and kept going. So I kept going to the 25, and I was catching fellas right, left, and centre, all those fellas that passed behind me. Because there was about a 2-minute interval between each cyclist. It's a time trial. It's against the clock. It's not against an individual, it's against the clock. So you have to take a different attitude towards you're cycling against the clock, you're not cycling against an individual. So if an individual flew by you now, you ignore them. You're just doing your own thing, your own calculation, and work yourself. So anyway, I got the turn. It's about an hour and 5 minutes. I said, that's okay. I have a tough wind there now, and then I'll turn here and the wind will be behind me. So I had 50 miles back. That was 25, and then I had 50 to come back through Monster again, up to the Red Cow outside of Dublin, turn there and come back another 25 miles then again to Monster to complete the 100. But I came back from the turn down beyond Portlee somewhere, and I came back and I was fairly moving. I had the wind behind me. I had no mechanicals. I had one mechanical problem, all right, where the chain wheel came off, but I was able to pull the chain wheel, bend down, get the chain, bring it up, put it on the wheel, and get it back on, luckily for me. So I had to take a chance. I couldn't lose time. So anyway, I was flying. I was hitting 30, 40, maybe 50 miles an hour in some places. And luckily, I never hit a pothole, and the road was full of them. The roads were in bad condition. See, the council couldn't repair the roads. They hadn't got the money but they were all potholes, and it was fierce. So I got as far as the Red Cow, and there was a crowd of people there, and when I was coming up to them, they all started roaring at me, come on, White, and I don't know. There must have been a lot of my friends, because they wouldn't be shouting, come on, Paddy White, if they weren't my friends. I had very few friends, but I think they were all Air Corps fellas that were out there waiting. But anyway, I got through it, and I turned into the wind, and I said, oh God. Everything wasn't too bad until I got down to just outside Naas, and the wind hit me straight in the face. And straight away, who appears up in front of me? Oh, the Ghost Rider. And at this time now, I was at the stage where I was ready to give up, because I was fighting nobody. I was fighting myself all the way. This fella got in front of me again, and he kept egging me on. He brought me over the plains of Kildare, the Curragh. There was no ditches in the Curragh. It was a plain road, built in high ground, and the wind was blowing straight across from Kildare town, straight into my face. And he was there, and despite the fact that I was finding it almost impossible to keep going, he was egging me on, and I kept going. So then I got as far as Kildare, and I went through Kildare, and there was a couple of fellas on the sideline, and they were seeing me coming, and they must have been waiting for me, but they knew who I was, and they started shouting me anyway, come on, clapped to me and everything else, and they called me by name and everything else, and it gave me a great lift. But the Ghost Rider was gone going through Kildare. He wasn't there. But just as I went beyond Kildare, heading for Monster, he appeared again. And now it was a long stretch of road now from going through Kildare into Monster. So I said, oh God, where's the finish? Where's the finish? And I looked down at my watch quickly, and I said that the hands of the watch were in around the 4 hours, but it didn't strike me what I was doing. It actually, the hands of the watch was less than 4 hours, and it didn't strike me, but I went for it anyway, and I was really a bad way. But I used to take liver with me. I love liver, because in a long cycle race like that, the main thing about it is keep your stomach full of something. And I picked on liver for some reason or other, because if you don't have something in your stomach, you lose all the energy in your body. You want to fall down and go to sleep. That's they call it the knock.
That's what I thought. That was very bizarre when I read liver the whole time. I thought, what
all the big long races, I used to eat liver, and slowly eat liver and drink. And I used to drink, maybe I had 3 bottles with me, but I'd always sip the water. I'd never gulp it down and take. Every so often I take a sip of the water, and eat a bit of liver all the time, and I never got the knock. And it's the other cyclists on the other side of the road, giving up because they got the knock. It just couldn't, no life, no energy left in it. And so everybody was saying, oh, you were way ahead of your time. Like, that was something people didn't learn about till years later, that was the cause of the knock.
That's something now, I'm not going to cut you off in your story there, but that is something I'd love to come back to and speak about, is how you seemed to be so tactically aware, even from 19 years old, stepping into it. I'm not going to cut off your story there now, but carry on, sorry.
So anyway, I got off the bike and I went down the road to Malbec first, and I was really knackered. And there was a ring of white, a hard white around my lips, and my eyebrows were white. And after a while, it was sweat. It was the salt, and it built up. And my eyebrows were white, so I had to get the salt off my eyebrows. So I came up anyway and stopped. And as soon as I got up, then I put my leg on the ground, and my leg collapsed underneath me, and I fell down the middle of the road. I couldn't stand up, so I was picked up and I ran back to the side, and I was sitting on the footpath. For a while I was sitting there, trying to recover. And the stewards were there, and the president of the NCA, Mr. Killeen, Jim Killeen, was there. And after a while he came over to me, and he had a grin on his face, and he got down on his knee alongside, put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, Paddy, he said, I'm going to tell you something here. He said, we won't get too excited at the moment, he said, but look, he said, that was a fabulous ride you done. He said, you went under 4 hours. And of course, it never came home, it never struck me, but so what? And he said, if it was, he said, it's the world record. And with that, I burst out crying. Now, I didn't realize I'd done a world record. I hadn't intended to do it or anything like that. So he said, we'd have to check it out. He said, we got to check the distance, make sure it was 100 miles. And then he said, we'll have to double. He said, the time again. He said, it's very important that we get the timing right. And he said, there's a meeting on next week. He said, in the meantime, I'll have done this. He said, so he said, come to the meeting, we'll see what the story is. So I heard no more. The word got out around cycling that the Paddy White had done the 4 hours, but there was never a talk at all about the world record. Because nobody had an idea what the world record was, or what it wasn't. And next thing anyway, I went to the Morton's Hotel, and there were all the meeting there, and Jim Killeen said, before we start the meeting, I have something to say. He said, I'm going to call Paddy White up here to the thing. So I went up to the rostrum, there was Scotland there, and they all stood up, and Jim Killeen said, shook me by the hand, he congratulated me, and he said, this man here, he said, last Sunday, he said, in Monster M, set a world record. And they all stood up and clapped me and everything else. And he said, he done the 100 miles in 3 hours, 58 minutes, 16 seconds. And that record stands today, still there. I've looked up everything. There's nobody done it. I'll give you the reason. I'll tell you why. So that was it. Finished. No more Abu or anything else. I continued on. My job was the Ross. I was going to win the Ross now. I was hell bent on winning the Ross. But if I won the Ross, I was going to go professional. So anyway, the Ross came up. And the first stage was from Dublin to Wexford. And I was in a breakaway again. And there were three of us. So Joey O'Brien, I remember him well, was in that break with me. And there was Terry Carmody, I think, from Kerry, and a couple of more. But eventually only three of us finished off, and we were going well, and I was eyeing up the two boys now for the finish. We were coming to the finish. And he was like, next thing I had, back wheel punctured. So I said, okay. Now we were well ahead. We were up a couple of minutes in the bunch. And I got off the bike and took off the wheel, quick, took off the tubular that was on it. I had a tubular at the time. The way I carried the tubular was across my shoulders. I made a figure of turning it and put my hands through the two holes.
And wore it on you. Yeah. No such thing as a support crew back then, was there not?
The car, there was a van from, but they hadn't a clue. They should have been up with me, But they were away at the back of They were behind everybody else. They were probably the last car on the road.
Yeah.
So there I was. I got the troubler on. It was raining. And didn't the rim get wet? And the glue wouldn't take a grip on the wheel. And I was second. I had it. So I sat there anyway, resigned, and next thing the car came along and they gave me another bike and I got on it and I cycled. Now this time the main bunch had passed me by, and I did my best. I got into Wexford anyway, and I said, yeah, to hell with it, I'll give it up. So I was thinking to myself, why should I give it up? I mean, there's another 7 stages to go. Sure, I can, I could make it up the time. I was down about maybe 15, 20 minutes down. So the next day we started anyway, and Joey O'Brien won that stage and he got the yellow jersey, and that nearly broke my heart. I didn't begrudge Joey. He was a nice fella. He was really an exceptionally nice guy. I had a great time for him. And to see him wearing the jersey, and I thought, that could have been me, And so I grinned my teeth again. I said, very good. I said, I'm not going to give up. I have nothing to lose now. So I started off from Wexford into Cork. And I went, broke away, and Mick Crystal and somebody else were with me, and we went up Watergrass Hill, and I attacked the tomb, and I dropped the tomb. I dropped Crystal and your man. I was on my own. Now all I had to do now was go into top gear and let fly all the way into Cork. But no, the chain got in between the 2 gears at the back, and I couldn't do feck on. I had to get off the bike, turn the bike upside down on the road, get the thing, and turn the wheel and pull the chain off it. And by the time I got it, I was lost again. So I cycled anyway.
You've no luck out here, no?
I attacked again. I went like hell. And I almost caught Crystal going to Cork. I almost caught him. And I came third. But we were so far ahead of the fellas that won the day before, we made up an awful lot of time. Now you talk about luck, and I've been cycling for 3 years. I never had a mishap in my life. And there was something wrong with this setup. I was getting worried. And anyway, we started the next day anyway from Cork, and it was Cork into Tralee. Again, I said to myself, I've made up some time here now. I didn't make up enough time at all, but I'll have a go. And we have to go through Mal's Gap. And I said, I'm going to give these fellas a thing to think about in Mal's Gap. And I went up and I attacked down. That was, before I go any further here, I told you earlier on about the CRE and the NCA. There was terrible bitterness between them. Carol Mccarthy, he was a doctor. And he was a great cyclist, and he had left the NSCA and he joined the CRE to go professional. And he went into the Tour of Britain, and he came second or third in the Tour of Britain. And he done very well. He just proved what a good cyclist he was. And anyway, he was out the road cycling training. He went out, of course, normally, and all he wanted to do was just see the race. But if he did that, he made an awful mistake. And I was up in the front, and I was bidding my time waiting for the climb to Mal's Gap. And I seen him, and I sprinted up a bit, and I said, Cal, get off the road, quick, will you get off the road? And he said, why? I said, get off the road. And I kept going, and I could hear an awful samazel behind me. The NCA fellas, most of them jumped off their bikes and bet him up. They nearly killed him. They threw his bike into a dike at the side of the road, and they kicked him all over the place because he left the NCA and joined the CRE.
So mid-race, a lot of these riders got off the bikes to do that to them.
They did. Oh yeah. I thought it was worse than that happened. It was worse than that happened, I could tell you. So, sure, I was threatened that my knees I would be knee-capped if I trained with Che Elliott. And they heard I was training with Che Elliott, and they called me to a meeting. And I went to a dinner with Che Elliott because he had asked me to go. And I got a plaque from the organisation for my position in the NCA. And he got a plaque. He was the best cyclist in the CRE. We sat together at the table. We had a great time. We weren't interested in politics. But the NCA heard about it, and they called me to a meeting and gave me an ultimatum that if I were ever caught associating with the CRE again, that they would see to it that I never cycled again. That was, in other words, threatened me, break my legs or something.
It's crazy how that becomes a part of something.
It was political.
Such a sport, like, but to do it in that violent a fashion, I mean.
But I'll tell you, I go back in that particular area now. I finish off the Ross.
Yeah.
And then I come back to that particular point about the politics in it. And it said that I went in and Moll's Gap, I was going up Moll's Gap and I was climbing. And I looked around and God, there was nobody near me at all. It was just great. So keep it steady, keep it steady. And I was going up. And about 100 yards to go up the thing, pew! Chain broke. Oh, Jesus Christ, what happened? I was in an awful state altogether. So the car
It's time for a new bike here, I think.
The car was now up better this time than the last time that I broke down, that they were way back and they couldn't get up to me. So they got up to me anyway, they gave me another bike, but of course, naturally, when the fellas seen me on the side of the road, they jumped and went like hell. They knew their chance now, to drop me and get rid of me. But if they did, I got to the top anyway, Miles Gap, and I went like the hammers of hell down the hill and took terrible chances on that road. I was going to corners. Geez, sometimes I just missed the ditch on the other side. And I went through Killarney and straight in and into Tralee. Now, I think I came in 6th or 7th in Tralee that evening, but I made up an awful lot of time, So the next stage would be from Tralee to Ennis. So the woman I was talking to, and my sister, my wife's sister was in Tralee, and she had a place in Boherbee. So I stayed with them that night, and they looked after me very well. I woke up the next morning, had a good hearty breakfast, and they were all behind me. I didn't do much talking to them or discussing anything with them. I went to bed very early because I told them I wanted a good night's sleep and I could separately go to bed. And I came out and I had a good bath that night and all. And from all the doctor, you needed a bath at that stage. So anyway, I got up on the bike and Tralee, and the race started. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, I just took off. I tacked. And I got away. And after a while, I put the head down and I started time trialing. And I was gaining. And I suddenly realized there was a fellow on my wheel. And I said, I looked behind, there was a fellow sitting on my wheel. And he had a Kerry jersey on him. He was one of the Kerry team.
Right.
And I was an army team. I had the blue on me. I was an army team. So after a while, anyway, we were about 5 minutes clear anyway. And he wasn't working. So I said to him, look, come up and work. No, nothing. And I shouted back in there, for F's sake, will you come up and work? And he said, I can't. And I said, you can hang in there, can't you? He couldn't come up and help. So anyway, we went along, and after a while, coming into Limerick, he came up alongside me, and he just shot by me, and I caught him. And I said, don't ever do that again. I said, if you do that again now, sir, I'll drop you. And that's it. You don't do things like that, I said. We're in this together, we're working together now, I said. And so you're not going to drop me, I said, that's for sure. So he stayed with me.
So hang on a second now. This is a competitor.
Yeah.
This is somebody who is racing against you.
Yeah.
And you're saying to him, don't try and drop me again because we're working together.
We're working together, yeah. The two of us were away.
But sure, he's trying to get away from you.
You see, the two of us were working bit and bit and bit and bit.
Right.
And we'll give each other a break at this stage. But he now wanted to drop me to go on and win on his own.
Okay.
Right, for his team.
Yeah, of course.
But I told him that if he ever done that again, that I would drop him and leave him stuck. He'd go back into the boat.
But sure, you were going to do that eventually.
It was too soon to do it.
Right.
I had a long way to go yet. But anyway, I said to myself, there's a beautiful trophy in Limerick called the Limitless Trophy. It was like the Sam Maguire Cup. A huge cup. And at this stage anyway, we were coming up and the man was, I could see the flag way up the road, waving the flag. That was the prime for the cup. So I bid my time anyway, and we had a few visitors anyway. A couple of more fellas caught up with us then, they were walking behind. One fella, oh jeez, I went crazy. When I have out, there was a teammate of my own was in a bunch that was chasing me down. And I didn't say very much, but it happened again the next day. But anyway, I went for it and I won the sprint. And now I had won the cup, the Limerick Leader Cup. I never got it. I never got it.
What happened to it?
And the cup, I won 13 primes between Dublin and Tralee. Between Dublin and Ennis. and I never got one of them. Never.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Because the people in the top had no prizes to give anybody, and they were using all these prizes that I had won to give out as other races. It was terrible. I don't know what went on.
But do you know what? I want to pull you back on something there if you don't mind. You were talking about there, and it was one question I was waiting for you to get to it, about your teammate, Crow.
Yeah.
Was it Crow?
Yeah.
Now, that's my surname now, is Crow, right?
Yeah, I know.
But
I'm coming to it.
okay, all right.
So we got through Limerick anyway, and a fellow on the motorbike came up to us and he said, "Hey, lads," he said, "you're doing well," he said, "but there's a chasing group coming up behind you," he said. "They're closing up on you." And I said, "Who are they?" And he mentioned it was Forum. And he said, so and so and so and so, and Crow. I said, "Who? Crow, who?" He said, "Your teammate." I said, "For fuck's sake, that's my teammate." I said, "What's he doing chasing me down?" Oh, Jesus, I went mad.
And it's, again, I come back to the tactical side of the sport, but also the oddness of the sport. You're part of a team, but also individual honours count for a lot as well. So that fella is trying to beat you, even though you're part of a team. And I'm sure the time works for you as a team, whichever one of you wins.
There was a team. There was a team prize as well.
Yeah.
And his position in as a teammate of mine was to defend my position at all costs.
Right.
No matter what, he was to sacrifice everything. He was even. It was agreed that if I was in the bunch and my bike broke down, either he or one of the other teammates would jump off their bike and give it to me. To keep me up front at all time, because the position of the team was dependent on my positioning. It was the aggregate time of all the riders.
Because you're the strongest rider.
Yeah. Our time would beat anybody else, which it did.
But sure, what's the relationship like then with you and your teammates if they know that?
Oh no, it was perfect.
Was it? Because you'd have to wonder. I would wonder now myself, if I was in that position and I was told, look, regardless of what's happened.
That was one of the rules and the regulations and the commitment between each other, that the man out in front, the best team man, would get full support from the rest.
And they agreed to that?
They'd give up their everything.
Really?
But to keep him there.
Okay.
But this fella didn't. He was helping the other fellow to attack. But anyway, I won the stage in tennis. I won that. And now I had so much time built up that I was less than a minute down on the leader, fellow O'Reilly from Antrim. And I was in great form altogether. Jeez, And that night there was a Cayley in Ennis to raise funds. See, they were short the money and they were to make a few bob. And they ran a Cayley and it was supported. Oh, jeez, it was packed. But I went back to the digs, the B&B that I was staying in, and I went to bed. Didn't go to the Cayley at all. Mm-hmm. And there's a funny story about that. There was people always talking about me, because everywhere I went, I brought the bicycle into the bedroom. Mm-hmm.
Your missus.
Anyway, he'd bring the bike to bed with him. Because the fellas that do anything, that do damage, they cut the fucking frame or do anything to you,
You said that. You mentioned that about your hot water bottles. Your bottles getting holes punched in them and everything.
Yeah, the bunch of the drink. I lost all my drink. No drink. That was a killer. It didn't matter because, it was my hometown. I went through it. But I still would like to have one ring of carry. I was only beaten by a short wheel. Jesus Christ! The three of us were together. Just after all I'd done, nothing to drink at all. Nothing.
And how do you? Well, first of all, would you not have gotten another bottle? No.
No, how could I?
I thought maybe you could have picked another bottle up from somewhere, but.
Oh, you were on the bike and you kept going. And because if you didn't, the guys that were with you just move on and left you there. You kept going to the very last. I got a bottle of water from two guys on a motor bicycle, and I drank it down. But sure didn't do me good. It did me okay. I recovered a bit all right. because I was behind this and I couldn't stay with them. They were pressing. They knew there was something wrong with me. And I never said to them that I have no drinks. I didn't say anything. But I played it very cool, and I caught them before we got into the Killarden or Killarney in the finish. And then the sprint started, and I was left behind. And then I attacked, and I closed in, and jeez, I just couldn't make the line. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I got it in, I remember, well, a priest came over to me. He said, "Come on," he said, "the presbytery is over here." He said, "Come on and have a cup of tea." He said, "You've had a hard day."
Yeah, exactly. I've got a sup of whiskey out there for your tea if you'd like.
No, the drink was out completely. All that stuff, I would drink or smoke or any of that stuff.
And you know, that's very interesting to me now. Look, I know hurlers, I know Gaelic footballers do it. They dedicate themselves to the sport like professionals. But it's crazy the dedication that was put into something that there was no money to be made from at that stage. Now, that was something that I was thinking about a few minutes ago when you were speaking about the CRE. When you turned professional, presumably there's money to be made then from turning professional.
Oh, you had to join a professional club in France.
Right.
And that was the whole idea. They were all professionals. They were all paid. The money was bad. It wasn't as good as it is now.
Okay.
Now they're millionaires. That time maybe they'd get £1,000 for winning a race. Nowadays they get $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that seems to be the way across all sports.
All sport, that's the way it goes. So we got nothing at all. Jesus Christ, I think about it. It's for the love of it and the kick you get for doing it, and the sort of satisfaction you get out of it, And but anyway, first of all, I come back to you. I said it.
CRE and the NCA.
Oh yeah, they hated each other.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely hated each other.
Because the NCA or the NACA is 32 counties of Ireland. The CRE is 26 counties. And then you had a Northern Ireland
Federation, yeah.
Afterwards. I think that came across afterwards, didn't it?
There was 3 associations involved. They were from the north. But eventually, years after I packed it up, they all got together. They couldn't see the logic in the way they were going on. So they decided that get an all-Ireland body, and as soon as they did, they were recognised internationally. Mm-hmm. Now, they could go and compete. Stephen Roach, Sean Kelly, all them fellas then went to France, became professionals. But the only thing, I never mentioned them in my book, you noticed that?
I did.
Well, for a good reason. Because they were on drugs. They took drugs. And I gave them no credit for winning anything.
Right.
That's my reason. I wouldn't even bring their names up. And Kelly was caught 3 times with drugs. And he was the good boy. Roach was at it. And Roach denied it. But yet this doctor that was in Rome, he had a ledger. And he had most of the cyclists on his books. And they used to go to Rome to him for injections and blood changes and tablets and everything else. Roach was in that book.
So he was found to be guilty of doing this.
Which was just Paul Kimmage just writes for the Independent.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Kimmage accused him in the Late Late Show one night,
right,
of being on drugs, and he challenged. Roach was there, and Roach challenged Kimmage to say, "Oh, okay, prove it." And Kimmage said, "Right, I have no problem proving it." He said, "Do you want to hear it? Do you want everybody to hear the story?" And Gabon cut him off.
Because he knew he could probably produce something.
He had the evidence.
Yeah.
Paul Kimmage was on drugs himself. He was a racing cyclist, professional cycling race. He was caught in drugs.
Right.
Then he turned out to be a correspondent for the press, for the Independent. You see, he's still on it. And he was the fellow that chased down Armstrong and wrote stories about him and corruption and all this other thing. But sure, he was in it himself. And Roach was in it. The only fellow that wasn't it, Early, there was a fellow called Early. He was another Irish professional, and I could get no evidence whatsoever to say he was ever on drugs, that guy. He won a stage in the Tour de France, but he was clean. But they're still at it. They're still at it.
Well, you see, I think in this day and age now, because I've watched an interview actually, I think with Lance Armstrong, but I think there's that much money in sports now, and everyone is an absolute elite athlete, that the only thing that an elite athlete can do to separate himself from the pack is potentially turn to drugs to help himself. And whether that be weightlifting, whether that be cycling, whatever it might be, you know.
See, the excuse is that unless you're on drugs, you get nowhere. Because all the fellas that are winning at the top, they're all on drugs. So you go on drugs. It gives you that extra bump or whatever it is, energy. And they just change that blood. They used to put that blood away and put it in the fridge and change it, before a big race.
I know there's a great documentary about it, and it's called Icarus. And it's a fella who was a semi-pro cyclist, racing cyclist, semi-pro. And he wanted to, for 1 year, do what Lance Armstrong did, which was try the drugs using the same doctor. But then beyond it, he found a whole conspiracy where Russia was involved in cleansing the blood and the drug tests and all. They found a whole thing behind it. But there was that amount of money. There's that amount of money in it.
Oh, there is.
That it's bound to happen. But the one thing that I was thinking with the NACA and the CRE is, one is a professional outfit and one is semi-pro or amateur, right? So even for reasons of turning professional, you couldn't move from the NACA to the CRE. Even if you said, look, I'm trying to make a living out of this, I'm trying to make money from this, they still would get off a bike mid-race and beat you up for it.
Yeah,
that's ludicrous. That's nuts.
See, no, I'll tell you a story. And this is true. You ever heard of the Crystals, did you?
The Crystals, the cyclists.
Cyclists.
You mentioned them a few minutes ago, but beyond that.
Crystal, he's the chairman of the Irish Boxing Association as well. That's his son. That's Joe Crystal's son. Joe Crystal was in the IRA, right? We had a sighting here in this country. There were NCA, Bertie Donnelly and all those guys. Great cyclists in the old days. And they used to compete. There was a cycling track around Crow Park one time, I know that. And they used to compete there. And Bertie Donnelly was an exceptional cyclist. I knew him. He confided me a lot. He gave me a lot of advice, Bertie Donnelly. And they were from Mulholland. So anyway, this whole situation developed, politics. Joe Crystal became very aggressive in the IRA in Dublin battalion, and they threw him out. So his ideas were way out, or weren't in touch with the ideas that the IRA had of what they wanted to do. Joe Crystal wanted to go this way, so they threw him out because he was in a nice. So he joined a cycling club. He formed a cycling club called The Gate. And most of the guys that on this thing worked in Guinness's, including his brother Mick.
The factory.
The beer place.
Yeah. Guinness factory, yeah.
Anyway, he formed, and eventually he built it up, and he formed the NACA. He joined a crowd called the Nationals. Now the NACA existed; they were athletics, they weren't cyclists.
Yeah.
But there was no cyclists in it until this happened.
Yeah, it was National Athletics and Cycling Association, wasn't it?
Cycling came into it, and then the National Athletics Association were also affiliated in the GA. They still are. And what happened then was that Joe Crystal wanted things done, and he used the cycling to do it. I was in a couple of races. Dublin to Derry to Omagh. One day, and it was a race from Dublin, and I won the stage. There was no talk about coming home. There was talk about going up. So I went on and I won it. Now Steve Abbott was second. Steve Abbott was a dub. And he was also, there was an awful lot of IRA men joined the NACA, the cycling. There were IRA men. There was O'Reilly. There was an O'Toole King. I could name a lot of them. They were all IRA men. They were cyclists, but they were no good. But they were suiting Joe Crystal's idea. We got to Newry that, and we were staying in a guest house. And that night, Joe Crystal said to, come on lads, we'll go for a walk. So he got a whole lot of cyclists to come out the road up towards Gough Barracks. And when they got up, they took out cameras and they started taking photographs of the barracks, the British barracks. And they were caught, they were spotted, and the soldiers came out and surrounded us. And broke the cameras on the road, smashed them, everything else, brought us into the barracks. Here was I, totally innocent. I was in the army at the time, I was a sergeant at the time. And as soon as I went in, the captain said, oh, this man, we know who he is. They had taped everybody, and they knew that I was an army man. So they put me to one side and they said, no, you can go. But the rest of them were interrogated, right? We came home, back down. There was no race back home. We made our own way home. It was only that's only one episode. So cycling season was over anyway. Next, there was news headlines. Omagh Barracks raided. IRA tried to get guns in the Gough Barracks. They went up and they raided the barracks. This is the place where they were taking the photographs. And a couple of nights later, at an NCA meeting, I was representing the Corps, and I went to it. And when I went in, Joe Crystal was there, and he had a big thing around his neck like that, and he had his arm up like that. And I went over to him. I said, Jesus, Joe, what happened to you? I said, did you fall off the bike? Mind your own effing business, he said. Don't ever ask me again what happened to me. He was shot, but got away. Got away. And that was it. They didn't achieve anything. Because one fella, he was a school teacher in Rathmines Technical School, and Clark was his name, Phil Clark. He got 11 years in Criminal Road Jail for being a part and parcel of that group. But they were all the Gate Club, and this was the club that was formed by Crystal.
It's mad. Why you'd choose a cycling club for basically a front for something like that, because how big was cycling in the day that you were going to use that as a recruitment point?
There was another situation, and I was in a cycle race one time. It was a track race, the North Island Championship at it. It was down the country, and I won the race. I beat the local hero. And nobody expected me to beat him. He was a great trackman in the Midlands. He'd won everything. Yeah, he was. So at that time, I didn't know. I was totally innocent, really. In some ways, I was clever enough. But there's a lot of things I hadn't learned. And I never got involved in betting. I didn't know anything about betting. But they were putting on bets on him that he'd beat me because I had a bit of a reputation. But they were putting on bets that your man had beat me. And he didn't. I beat him. And when I beat him, 3 miles it was, I bet him well. I bet him afterwards. I bet him again in the Army Championships after that. The 3 mile Army Championships, I bet him sick. But anyway, this guy came chasing after me, and he said, get your tracksuit on quick. He said, get the hell out of here. He said, because if they catch you, they'll kill you. And he had a box underneath, went to a box like that with a canteen, cutlery. The winner was supposed to get it, and he was the man that gave out the prizes, right? And she said, take that. You see, there was 6 forks, 6 knives, 6 spoons, 6 dessert things. That was usually prizes. Now, I was short of money at the time. I said to him, man, do you want them? I said, take that off me, give me £1. He took it off me.
In the heat of the moment, never forget a sale.
He took it off me, and I got out. And I said to him, what's going on? He said, if they catch you, he said, they'll kill you. He said, you're after beating your man. He said, all the money was on your man.
And you just took off. They never got near you, no?
I took off. I got my tracksuit, and the thing was over in the corner of the field. There was no dressing room.
Yeah.
I just put on my trousers, put on the coat. Your man came up to me and said, get the fuck out of here quick, he said. They'll kill you if they catch you.
Right.
Yeah.
But they never caught up with you ever again after that. Well, obviously not. You're still
No,
here
no,
at 90 years old.
There's no telling more it happened.
Yeah. No such thing as internet in those days. They got well away from it.
So that was one of the things. And then after that, then of course, cycling was finished. I crashed and going into Galway for minutes.
And can you tell me about that? Tell me about that crash. Because you were what? I think you were 23 at this stage, I think, weren't you?
I know I was yeah, I think, yeah, 23.
23.
And I started off from, it was from Ennis to Galway. It was a time trial. And I was last off. And the next thing I took off, and Riley, who was leading the Ross, I passed him on the road. I passed him out, left him dead. And I was gone, and I was flying. And this guy on a motorbike said to me, he said, Jesus, he said, Paddy, he said, you're flying. He said, you're away ahead. He said, you've passed everybody. He said, you're away ahead. You're leading the Ross, he said. And of course, I was thrilled with myself. But then I was driving like mad. I was driving like mad, really pushing it. And it was a straight bit of the road, and there was a railway bridge over the road, and there's an S-bend on the road. And there was a policeman there, and his job was to make sure that the road was clear. He was there for the race, like, stop any traffic, don't let any cars come down. And he done that to me. Come on, he said, clear. So I went and I took the easy way out. I took the corner, the cut down time in seconds count. And all I remember is picking up the bike, trying to pull the bike out of a ditch. I hit a fucking car, the side of it. And I was fucking up in the air. The handlebar went in there, tore up along here, cracked through ribs. And I split my lip. There's a mark there, still there. My lip was wide open. And there was another side here. A spoke went in through my hand. It went in there. And it came out here. And I had to pull that spoke out of my hand. And I tried to straight up the bike. There was a couple of spokes sticking out. And I cycled into Ennis, and it was a couple of minutes down on the winner, overall winner. I was still there with a chance. So I had a big gash on my leg, and
as important as it is now to be only a couple of minutes away from the winner, when I read that part of the book, I thought that was amazing, because this is how this conversation came about. It was when I met you a couple of weeks ago. That was what you told me about the race, but you never said you went on to finish it. You told me that the handlebar went into your thigh, in your leg, and ripped all the way up through your thigh, through your hip, cracked your ribs.
yeah.
And then you got back on the bike. Presumably, you're feeling a little faint from a lot of blood loss here.
The adrenaline was running. I never
The
realised
adrenaline.
how bad that was. When you entered, I didn't realise it. There was blood everywhere.
Mm.
I had a big cut there on the side of my head as well. And the blood was flowing down my face. And my knees, I don't know which crash gave me that one or which crash gave me that one, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I fell several times, but this was unbelievable. I was unprotected. I didn't realise what was going to happen. The fella in the car was in an awful state, and I said, don't worry about it. I said, it was my fault. So I took responsibility for it, because I took the wrong decision, made the wrong decision. And the next day I started again, and I got up on the bike, and I went maybe a mile, and I said, oh, jeez, I can't hardly breathe. So I got off the bike, and I said, that's it, finished.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't know, you mustn't have known at that stage that you'd ribs broken.
No, I didn't. Well, the army medical guy strapped me.
Right.
But he strapped me in such a fucking way. He made the fucking thing, you have to breathe.
Yeah. It helps on a bike, I find. Yeah.
And the night before, they cleaned my leg. But there was imbrication on my thigh. And there was dust on my leg, and it had stuck. And the fucking idiot, instead of washing me down first, started rubbing stuff onto my leg to loosen out the muscles. And he rubbed the stuff into my wound. Nearly poisoned me. Oh, what could you do?
And what's the advice here then from the doctors? The advice can't have been to go back out here, get on there and finish the next leg.
No, I spent a lot of time in Brickens. hospital. I was in the army, and I was carried off. And I was in Bricken's hospital for at least 3 months. And some people told me that I was anointed, that I had fainted on several occasions and things like that. I don't know. I probably did, but I got better anyway. And I had going with a girl from Swords. She's up there, and she's died now. She's dead now, 12 years. And anyway, when I came back out, I was in Swords when I went down to see her. And I cycled from Beldown down. It was no problem. I cycled nice and easy. And then I got time off, and I was hanging around. And I went out the Ballyherry Road, out through Murtagh's, the offer Murtagh's pub was out there before you come into Balbriggan. And then I said, I'm going to have a go here now. And I straightened up and I went, here goes. And I put in a real hard on next to the pain, the merciful pain in my leg. So I stopped and I went back, and I went to see the doctor, and he looked at it and he said, was your leg ever x-rayed after that crash? I said, no. Oh. So he says, I'll have to get you x-rayed. And I sent back in again to Bricken's. And they x-rayed my leg. And so I went to see him again, and he said to me, I have bad news for you. He said, I'm afraid, he said, your cycling days are finished. He said, because he said, some of the muscles, he said, never got back. He said, they were left too long, and they never get them back on the bone again. They were cleaned off. And he said they could be knit back, but it's too late now, he said.
But an army doctor didn't know that.
They didn't know. That's the way things were. They had none of this thing.
Right.
Nowadays, the first thing you get now.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Then you didn't. The X-ray was the last thing you think about.
But can I ask you about a crash like that, and then you get a diagnosis at 23 or so, where you're absolutely bet into the cycling? It's your whole life is about the army and the cycling.
Yeah.
When that finishes completely unplanned, what does that do to you?
It deflates you a bit, but luckily for me, I was able to take it. I had this attitude in mind. So what? There's other things. I left the Air Corps. I joined Aer Lingus. I got on very well in Aer Lingus. I was there for 5 or 6 years. I was made a foreman. Out of the blue, like I went up the ranks real fast. And then a job came up in the civil service. And I was highly qualified. And I got a diploma in aeronautical engineering. And I studied, I told you the education I had was national school. But I studied. I studied hard. And they sent me all over the world on courses and everything like that. And they were very good to me. They wanted to keep me. And the day I was leaving Aer Lingus, they called me into the office, and the manager, he said to me, would you not stay with us? He said, well, say, I would have, I said, but I applied for a job here several times, I said, and I didn't even get any recognition for it. I got no reply. Oh, he said, that was a pity. He said, you should have been told. He said, but we had you earmarked for, he said, we want to get you to be a manager. I said, it's too late. I said, I'm going to the civil service.
And it was at that point then that we finished the conversation, because I had noticed that the battery in his microphone had gone. But it was almost lucky timing in a way, because his daughter had turned up not 2 minutes later. But hopefully you got something out of that episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Maybe you walked away with the same opinion that I did, which was he must be one of the best sports people that you've never heard of in this country. And perhaps that's because his professional career was almost non-existent, if not entirely. But even as an amateur or a semi-pro, I thought the achievements that he had racked up, the name that he had made for himself, I thought it was amazing that I had never heard of him. But like I said, hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully you got something out of it. And I'll be back to you again soon with the next. Thanks a lot.